All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where we are back with former Harvard admissions officer Devery Doran as part of a summer-long series we have on college admissions prep, complete with secrets of the SAT, all kinds of admissions events with Devery and others to help us understand the whole college admissions process. From we started a couple months ago with how to research and visit schools. We've talked about the essays. Tonight we're going to talk about extracurriculars, and throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall, we'll be doing that much more. So should note, if you're a Varsity Tutors Learning member, you've also got free small group classes on prepping for the SAT, the ACT, for your application essays, even everything like financial aid and school selection and all those kind of things. So part of your long commitment to making sure everybody has everything they need. If you're not a learning member, we'll make sure there's some information in the chat here for you to find out how to become one, to get even deeper in smaller groups and more repetition on all these subjects that really matter, and getting ready for all your school classes back in the fall as well. Tonight, like I said, Devery's going to talk us through what makes extracurriculars excellent, especially as everyone's planning for back to school. What do you want to get involved in? What are the differences between maybe a jack of all trades and a master of none versus really specializing? All those questions you guys have, we'll get in here. You guys do have lots of questions. Please keep those coming in the chat. My job, other than getting us introduced here, is to monitor the chat, make sure Devery doesn't have to multitask too much, because you guys have so many comments and questions there. So if you got questions, don't hesitate to ask them. In the last 10 minutes or so, I'll interview Devery with your questions. But for now, let's get to it. I want to introduce your instructor for tonight, Devery Doran, admissions expert, former Ivy League admissions officer, and someone who puts the extra in extracurriculars.
Thanks so much, Brian. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us this evening, and welcome back to those of you who have been here before. My name is Devery Doran. I am a former senior admissions officer from Harvard College. I've also read applications for Berkeley. I've worked as a college counselor, helping students find their best fit colleges for about 15 years now. So I've read well over 20,000 applications and essays and worked with hundreds of students through this process, really helping students concentrate on that best fit, really finding their colleges where they will thrive, right? And making sure they're making kind of the right choices as they go through high school, and, doing some of that introspection for them. So always excited to be here. As I can tell from my background, I am located in San Francisco, California. All right, so as Brian said, please keep those questions coming in. If I catch them while I'm presenting, I will definitely try to address them. Hopefully I'll answer quite a few of them just throughout the presentation with what we're covering today. And then of course we'll leave some time at the end. All right, let's get going. All right, so today's curriculum or extracurriculum, we're going to cover why and where extracurriculars appear on an application. So like, why are they important? What are admissions officers looking for? How do you present them in the application? How do we, how do you make your extracurriculars matter? How do you give them meaning? We're going to talk about writing about them. So, where does it come up in the application? How are you presenting it? And your extracurricular game plan, kind of depending on what grade you're in, and kind of what your goal schools are. All right, so let's start off with a little interaction with our audience here. So in the chat, could y'all throw in why you think extracurriculars matter to admissions officers? So why do you think admissions officers want to know how you're spending your time outside of the classroom? I'm going to let those trickle in. Okay. They want to see you're doing things outside of the classroom, right? They want to see diversity. They want to know you care more or do more than just academics, that you have developed in other ways to make you stand out. Shows that you're well-rounded. Great, that you can manage your time. That's a good one. That you have community outside of school. Awesome. These are all great, and they're all generally pretty right on. Extracurriculars are important to admissions officers for many reasons. I think probably first and foremost, admissions officers' jobs are not just to it's not just to find the best fit academic students. It's to find the best overall community members. They are looking to admit students who are going to, yes, thrive in the classroom, but also thrive outside of the classroom and be active community members. Admissions officers are trying to do what's best for their colleges. And so when they think about all the resources their colleges have, one of the things they think about are the, perhaps hundreds, if not several hundred extracurricular activities they have on campus. They have pre-professional organizations, lots in the arts, in the performing arts, in writing. They have lots of community service. They have affinity groups. They have sports. There's so much to do on campus, and it's such a huge part of their culture and their values and who they are that they want to make sure, students are going to be active on their campuses, that they are going to be part of this greater community, because your unique perspective is an incredible value add to these colleges. They want you to speak up in class. They want you to speak up outside of the classroom as well. So they're really trying to get to know you. And by looking at your extracurriculars, they are getting evidence that you can indeed be involved outside of the classroom, but they're also getting a sense of who you are and what you care about and what you might be good at, or, what you've really worked hard to get better at, right? So it can really tell a lot about your personality, what's important to you, and honestly helps them imagine you on their campuses, right? What you might be involved with in the future. So when admissions officers are, just as a kind of quick recap, when admissions officers are looking at your application, for the most part within the US system, and especially at selective universities, selective institutions, admissions officers are practicing something called holistic admissions. So holistic coming from the word whole, meaning they're looking at the whole student. So they are looking, of course, at your academics, right? They want to make sure you can do the work. They want to make sure you're intellectually curious. They are looking at your personal qualities. They want to get to know you as a person, see what you're about, understand your background and your perspectives. And they want to know what you've been doing outside of the classroom, right? They have a whole section kind of dedicated to extracurriculars with a lot of emphasis on any leadership and impact you've had within your outside activities. So it's kind of these three pillars, these three different dimensions make up what they're looking for when they're looking at students. It's kind of the rubric, so to speak, that they use, right? They want to make sure you can handle the workload and do well. They want to make sure you'll be active on their campuses, and they want to make sure you're a good overall community fit. So the way that they really kind of look at this, right, is that you're going to look at this through your entire application, and they are going to, ask themselves, like, is the student going to, based off what their activities have been, is the student going to, thrive in their academic choice? Is the student going to find a home, in some of these extracurriculars? So they're really trying to get a sense of you. Right. I should have started with this, but a question I think is also really important to mention is that extracurriculars can be, what are extracurriculars exactly? So we're asking, why and where they appear, but what are they exactly? I always, have students ask, like, oh, what about if I work, or I've done an internship, or, I'm taking extra classes outside of school, or I'm coding, or I'm taking care of my siblings, do those things count? And the answer is yes. Absolutely. An extracurricular is how you're spending your time outside of the classroom, how you're spending your time of things that are not required of you. So if it's not part of the school curriculum, then what are you doing, right? It's extra. You are choosing to do this. You are opting into this. And so it can tell them a lot about what you care about, or what your responsibilities are, what's on your plate, and so forth. So almost anything, honestly, can be an extracurricular in this process. So just so you know, it doesn't have to be a formal extracurricular with your school. It can be community service. It can be something you do through your religious organization. It can be an online community that you're a part of. It can be a great many things. It's pretty open-ended, quite honestly. All right, let me go back to the screen here. Okay. So what are schools exactly, kind of looking for, right? And I mentioned this, but when they're looking at your extracurriculars, they are truly looking to see that you have, I think, gone above and beyond just participating, but that you've also kind of pushed yourself to grow within an organization. Hopefully you've been committed to an organization or two. You have kind of stuck with it, hopefully throughout high school. You haven't necessarily kind of, jumped from thing to thing and changed your mind every year. They want students who have follow through. They want students who have had possibly leadership positions or have in some way positively impacted an organization, whether that's growing the number of students who are in it, fundraising for it, mentoring other students, expanding the reach of the organization. Those are all great things that can demonstrate somebody's really active, really involved, really cares about what they're doing. And again, they're doing this because they want to make sure you are part of a vibrant campus community, that you are deeply involved, that it's a good fit for you. And they're also looking for, students who, really push themselves, students who can challenge themselves, students who can, bring up those around them. They can achieve certain things as well, right? They want students who can go above and beyond and can get things done, can take initiative, and are hopefully, relatively good at the things that they do. All right, so let's kind of dig into where extracurriculars appear on the application. So extracurriculars can appear kind of throughout the entire application. There is, of course, a whole section dedicated to listing your extracurriculars. So if we were looking at the common application, for example, there is a section, the activity section, where you can list up to 10 of your extracurriculars. You can check what years you were involved, if it was, just during the school year or just the summer or throughout the entire year. And you can note any leadership positions or titles you've had, especially if they change year over year. And then you have 150 characters to actually dig, to kind of give a highlight reel of what you were able to accomplish or what your impact was within the organization. 150 characters is not a lot. It's definitely not a lot. And so you've got to think about what you're writing there, and you have to be very purposeful. You can't write incomplete sentences. It's got to be kind of more of a snapshot, a couple of snapshots that maybe emphasize what you did, right? So you were part of a winning team that went to nationals, or you were, you mentored underclassmen, or you fundraised X amount of dollars, or you founded the organization, right? So you're trying to give them a quick snapshot of what you've been able to do. So not a ton of space, actually takes quite a bit of time to fill out. So don't think just because there's not a lot of word count that it's not something you should put off. You also are going to be ranking these extracurriculars by the order you place them in. So you have the up to 10 to fill out, but number one should be an organization that's been the most significant to you, right? And hopefully that's something that you've been doing, you're still doing, right? Something you've been doing, at least since 11th grade. So it's 11th and 12th grade at minimum, right? And it hopefully really highlights something that you're passionate about, something you've really dug into. So your extracurriculars will show up, obviously, in this activity section. It is also, I want to mention, it's not about quantity by any stretch of the imagination. It is very much about quality, right? So if you've put in a ton of time into 2 to 4 organizations, that is going to stand out a lot more than somebody who's been a part of 10, 20 organizations, but all they've done is just gone to meetings, right? They participate, they go to one meeting a semester, right? It is so much more for somebody to have committed to organizations, to have led from within and left a positive impact, right? But it's fewer activities. All right, so it shows up in that section. It's also going to show up in other parts of your application. So oftentimes, as part of supplemental essays, so every college will have its own specific essays it wants you to answer. They'll oftentimes ask you, to expand on an extracurricular that you've been a part of. And the goal there is not, for you to give them a play-by-play of what a practice is like, or for you to kind of give them your schedule or just kind of list out what the activity even is, right? It's really also meant for you to dig into why this extracurricular is important to you, right? Does it give you a sense of community? Does it push you to be better? Has it helped you build confidence? Have you happened to be, do you happen to be good at it, or do you just really push yourself, right? So it's your opportunity to be able to really expand on like one extracurricular that's been quite significant to you. They're not looking for you to just kind of reiterate things that they can already glean or can kind of guess from that extracurricular section. All right, so it might also pop up in other essays as well. So in your main personal statement, the essay where you really get to talk about yourself, add new information, and try not to repeat anything that they already have, like your transcript or list of activities. Sometimes your extracurriculars do come up, right? Because it might be something you're really passionate about and you really want to expand on how you grew this interest. And why it's significant to you. It might be something, you're mentioning in passing as kind of like a theme, or you might use your extracurricular as like the overall kind of, to kind of outline and bring together the whole essay, but you're really kind of talking about deeper things as you go through it. That's great too. The more you put into your extracurriculars, the more you like what you're doing, the more passion you have, the more likely you are to really dig into it, right? The more likely you are to go deeper, to want to spend more time, doing a certain activity because you care about it. And when you care about something, that comes through in your application. You can tell when somebody authentically enjoys what they're doing based on their writing and how they write about it. And you can tell when someone does something because they feel they have to, right? Or they're doing it for the sake of doing it versus finding that enjoyment in it. So the more you actually enjoy what you're doing, the more excited you'll be to write about it, and the more information you'll have to write about it, and the more compelling it will be in your essays. Extracurriculars will also come up in other ways. They might very well come up in an interview, or they will come up in an interview. So if you are applying to schools that offer interviews with an alumnus of their university, typically they'll, have a 30, 45-minute conversation with you, want to know a little bit about your academic interests, and they're going to want to know how you spend your time outside of the classroom and why you choose to do what you do, right? And so they're trying to get a sense of why this is what you do, but also they're also trying to imagine you on that campus, right? They're trying to see, oh yeah, I can totally see her joining this a cappella group, or, being part of the Young Dems, or, doing X, Y, and Z based off of her interest, based off what she's telling me, right? So it will definitely come up there. And it could easily come up in your letters of recommendation. So when you are submitting to selective colleges, they often ask for 2 academic letters of recommendation and a counselor letter. Some schools only want 1 teacher and 1 counselor, but you're probably going to prepare at least 2 teachers. And those teachers might be able to talk about you outside of the classroom as well, either because they happen to be your history teacher and your student council advisor, or because you have done something on campus that they have seen and has affected them, that they can actually speak to it. So an example here would be, someone taking over the big school carnival every year. Like the school has a big event every year. It's a big fundraiser for a local community organization. And it's like a community builder. Everybody comes, and it's a big deal, right? But it takes a lot of time to put together. So a teacher who, went to that, and also had the student in their classroom would be able to say, Brian put in all of this work, and it resulted in a year where we've, fundraised X amount of money. We, the shows were great. The food was great. It all was and it was a great event. And, she's an excellent student. She's done this, this, and this, but she can also do this, right? Like, so they can talk about experiencing what you've been able to do. If you're an actor, they will, if they go to your plays, if you're an athlete and they go to a sporting event, if you play an instrument and they go to a recital, right, they'll be able to see you in action and share that information. So it will also likely pop up, in your letters of recommendation. So how you spend your time and how deeply you go into these activities and really kind of think about how much impact you can have, like what lasting kind of legacy you can leave in these organizations is important. And the more you do, the more you dig in not the number, but in the quality, the more you dig into your activities, the more you'll have to talk about, the more others will have to talk about like what you're doing. And it can, be a compelling piece of your application and take you far in this process. All right, here's the $100 question. Is it better to be well-rounded or is it better to be specialized? So I might even add, is it better to be well-rounded? Is it better to be specialized focused? Or is it better to have just one thing that you do and that's it? And I want to see what y'all think. So I'm getting well-rounded, lots of well-rounded. Yep. A couple of specialized, but pretty much well-rounded. And I also got depends on the college. Interesting. So what does it mean actually? And which one do I think is better per se? So I do want to kind of have a disclaimer here and let you know that I'm going to talk about kind of different levels of involvement in organizations. And I'm wearing like my Ivy League admissions hat, right? Where they have acceptance rates of 3 to 8%, right? So it's really difficult to get in, and the competition is really impressive, and because there's so many applications, right? So the bar is pretty high there. The expectations are really high. So I don't want you to feel disillusioned or like, oh, I'm not going to get into college if I'm not doing something at the state or national level. I just want you to know that, at the Ivy League level, things can be, expectations are pretty high, and it's going to vary from college to college. But as long as you're active outside of the classroom and exploring things you care about, there will be a place for you in terms of, finding a community. It just may not be at the most competitive level. So, actually, is it better to be well-rounded or specialized? All right, or do one thing. So I'll say that it really depends on the student. And I'm not trying to be vague, but it really depends on each individual student. So you might be somebody who has a lot of interest, right? You are a dynamic person and you like to try different things. And maybe the activities feed you in different ways. So you say, okay, I'm going to do a sport or two. I am going to be a part of student government because I want to have a say in how my school runs. I like the arts. I'm not very good at it. So I think I'll, be in a couple of plays, but I'll be in the ensemble. I'm not going to be the leading person. I'm going to be busy with my summers. Maybe I'll work, do an internship. Maybe I'll study one summer. And I really want to make sure that I get involved in my community. So I'm going to do some community service, but I'm going to really focus on a cause I care about, which is, getting people registered to vote. So those are the things that I care about. So those are the things I'm going to concentrate on. And, I'm going to try to take on leadership roles where I can, but I want to be part of these communities. Great. Yes, that student is well-rounded, right? They're doing a number of things in different areas, different fields. So, because they have lots of interests, but they all are important to that student. You can be more specialized, or maybe even instead of being well-rounded, well-lopsided, where you're really kind of focused on a general area, right? But you're still doing a few things. So it could be, I'm really into STEM. So if I'm really into STEM, I want to be a part of an academic team. So I want to be a part of an academic team, maybe like Bio Olympiad, and I want to be part of the robotics club where we get to compete and I get to learn coding and I get to like mentor younger students. And I do want to volunteer, but I'm going to volunteer as a tutor where I help middle school students with math and science. And, in the summers, I'm going to try to find an opportunity to maybe do either some independent research on a science topic that's interesting to me, or maybe, with a professor if I'm really lucky, or, maybe an independent study with one of my teachers at school. So I'm doing a number of things and I'm interacting with people, and I'm also doing, kind of academic and service and something that's on a team, but it's all kind of in one area, right? I have that specialization, that focus. And then we have students who maybe only do like one activity. That's it. That's all they have time for. But they're typically the students that are only doing one activity are doing that activity at a really high level. If they're trying to get into like a top university, or like a university with a really low admissions rate, that one activity has to be really high. It's got to be like national kind of high. So like, a junior Olympian, could be a recruited athlete, top 20 debater in the country, a winner of the like Intel Science Fair, or a top 10 in the Intel Science Fair for all the research they've been doing. So it has to be something truly exceptional if you're only going to do one thing. Otherwise, you want to try a few things and kind of figure out what works for you. If you feel like you are a more well-rounded person and have lots of interest and want to do that, great. If you already have more of a focus and want to do that, great. I just say kind of push yourself to make sure it's not just one thing, like you're not only doing 4 academic teams, maybe there's some service in there, maybe there's some independent research or some other kind of learning in there as well. There is no perfect checklist when it comes to what should I do, right? What are admissions officers looking for? It really is about you, what you enjoy, where you're going to be excited to spend your time, right? Because the more excited you are, the more you'll put into it. But I can give you some general tips in this area. So your extracurriculars are truly extra. They are not co-curriculars, meaning they do not have to be related to what you are going to study, right? But they can be. And I think maybe one of your activities, or at least something you do outside of school, should hopefully explore what you want to study in college. So especially if you're into STEM, for example, let's say computer science. Computer science is, of course, a very competitive major to get into and is very much a major in need. We need more software engineers. We need more computer scientists. So it's an awesome career path. But if you are interested in CS, then admissions officers need to know that not only can you do the work, but that you're also truly interested in the subject, right? So that might mean that, you've taken CS in school, maybe you've taken a couple of extra classes outside of CS. So that could be, you've taken a Coursera course, or you're going to a coding academy, or, you're just kind of playing around and building things. That's all great. But they want to see that you're doing it outside of the classroom, right? You have your own side projects. You really enjoy it. You're learning other languages. Like it's something you want to do because it's pretty important to making that your career. And, I would kind of say the same about other majors, especially if it's not something you can take in your high school. So if you say, I really, AP psychology is no longer offered at my school, but I really want to be a psychologist. Okay. That's great. Why, right? Is it because you've interned with a psychologist because you have been studying neuroscience, because you are really curious about why humans make decisions and you want to go into marketing for it. And so you've been taking these classes or doing extra reading or, are part of have been studying it in some way or another. So you really I would really try to find something that will help you explore your major as much as possible. And I think an obvious connection here would be anything in the performing arts. If you say you want to be a, drama major, or you want to be, a music major of any sort, then of course you need to be taking those classes and really doing those things in your extracurricular time, right? So those are some pretty obvious connections. I would also say that it is beneficial to do something that demonstrates you can work with others. So not all of your activities should be independent, right? So show that you can collaborate and show that you care about others in some capacity. So that can be you're on a team, can be academic team, can be a sports team, can be that you've started an organization of some sort as well. There's really a lot of choice there. All right. So I would say showing that you can collaborate, showing that you care about others, and showing an interest in an academic area are I wouldn't say good boxes to tick, but a good idea if you're trying to plan out what kind of activities you want to be a part of. All right. Which activities do schools most like to see? So I basically kind of just covered that. I will also add the caveat here that it's really important not to do activities or to do really anything in the application that you're doing just because you think that's what colleges want to hear or want to see. So, you don't write an essay in a certain style just because you think that's what the admissions officer wants to see. Don't do an activity because you think that's what we want to see. Do what makes sense for you. Again, because if you're feeling forced to do something, it's gonna come across as kind of bland in your application. Whereas if you really like something, you're going to go above and beyond, kind of push yourself within an organization. So do the things that are important to you, but also kind of think about, all right, if I have this academic interest, how can I demonstrate that? And how can I show that I can collaborate with others? Oops. All right. So do schools prefer A, school-based activities, B, off-campus activities, C, church and volunteer activities, or religious organizations and volunteer activities? All right. All of the above? B, off-campus. Some C, depends. Cool. Yeah, it is all of the above, right? It depends, again, obviously it depends on you and what you're interested in. If your school doesn't have something, then, you've got to go out and find it, right? You've got to find it off campus. You've got to find it in your community, in an online community. You've got to find it elsewhere. So it can be, your activities can be a combination of on campus, off campus, something in the greater world. Great. They don't have to be. Again, it's not a checklist. It's just about doing what makes sense for you. And again, I want to reiterate that extracurriculars are, what's included in an extracurricular can be a great many things, but taking care of siblings or grandparents, having to work to help support your family, are very much considered extracurriculars and are very important, right? You're doing a huge role and you're taking on a big leadership role for your family. So they are viewed positively, right? So don't feel like that is not something that is going to add value, because it really, really does. All right. Okay. How important is community service? This is definitely a question I get quite a bit. So community service is not something you have to have. I'll make that clear, right? It's not a box that you have to check. I do think that a lot of high schools require a few hours every year, whether it's a graduation requirement or you're a National Honor Society and you have to have so many hours in order to stay in National Honor Society. So everyone's bound to do a park cleanup or a food drive at some point, right? So everybody probably has a little bit of service. If service makes sense for you, if it's a way to, dig deeper into a subject that you care about, or it's like kind of who you are, you really want to be involved in a certain way, whether that's getting people to vote, working out of the food shelter, volunteering at your church's children care center, on Sundays, whatever it is, right? You are giving your time because it's something you believe in. And that can be something wonderful and something great, but it is not something you have to have in order to be a strong candidate. I will say that I do think there is value in community service because it gets you out of your bubble, right? It gets you out of your school bubble, maybe your neighborhood bubble, and can definitely demonstrate different perspectives to you, which I think can really help in growth. But it is, so I think for the sake of, trying to grow and have a, broader perspective, I'm all about it. It also kind of just shows that you have concern for your community, that there's a kind of an element of kindness there, but you can also demonstrate those qualities elsewhere in the application. So if it doesn't make sense for you, it doesn't make sense for you. So don't worry about not having it or not having enough of it. Just make sure you're spending your time doing other things as well. Okay. All right. So what are the key factors in extracurricular involvement? So what are admissions officers really kind of looking for here? We've talked about commitment, right? They want to see that you have kind of stuck it out with some of these activities, that you've been doing them pretty consistently, and that you're involved with them, right? That they know you have followed through. That's, that's kind of what they're trying to gauge. Leadership, they might be looking for leadership. Leadership comes in many forms. It can come through a title, right? Which is, easier to capture. And it can come through just your actions, right? That can also make you a leader. So I do want to mention that, leadership is great, or having a title is great. But just because you have a title, that does not mean that you are having a lot of impact, right? It might mean that you're running a meeting. Maybe you show up to a couple of events, but, being president of an organization doesn't, automatically kind of make you stand out. It's what you do with your position that matters. And so it's really that impact piece that they're really, truly looking for on a lot of levels. So impact comes in many forms, right? Impact can be, as I've mentioned, right, you've grown the organization, or you found a way to make sure it doesn't stop when you leave. Maybe you kind of started a playbook to make sure that, the sophomores can take over when you graduate. It's starting your own organization. It's expanding, the number of views on a social media channel that, talks about, access to education. It is the impact that you have is, far more important, and definitely gives you something to write about than just a title does. And you can definitely lead without a title. I think so many times I have students who, maybe join a committee, right? Or they see that something needs to get done and they just take the initiative and do it without the title, right? I think that's actually the best kind of leadership. Somebody who sees that something needs to happen and they do it because they can and because it needs to be done, right? So the impact that you have is huge. I would say also for students who are kind of thinking about, well, okay, so, what does it mean to, like, what do I need to be doing? Or like, at what level will I be considered like a good candidate for, for an Ivy? Like, how much should I be participating or really kind of digging into these organizations? And I would say, definitely having a leadership role, probably means that you are going above and beyond. And having a leadership role could be your, first chair, right? You're a concert master in the orchestra. You are the drum major in the marching band. You're president of your class, you're captain of your football team, and so on, right? So there's a lot that comes out of that. But if you are truly, trying to kind of stand out in this competitive pool, you need to think beyond just kind of what's expected as well. So it's not just because you're captain or just because you're president that's going to make you stand out. It's, again, going to be about what you've been able to do with it, but also, have you been able to do anything maybe that's a little bit outside of the norm, right? So, you're a very good violinist. That's wonderful. You're a concert master, but have you shared that love of music with anybody else, right? Have you maybe done some community service around sharing music? Played at a retirement home, or, did you help start a music program for a school that's underfunded, or, do you enjoy teaching your younger siblings to play piano, right? That's a way for you to, have this title, but to then also demonstrate that you're deeply involved in this music, that you really care about it. If you have a title and you are president of, your ASB, your student council, and you talk about how you really care about the environment, like, you can use your platform to figure out how to get solar panels installed, how to fundraise, how to make sure the recycling program, actually takes off in your school, right? That's actually having impact and going beyond just running meetings or maybe planning a couple of school events and using your power, for good kind of thing. So it's about taking everything to the next level, going beyond what is just expected, and, using your influence, using this position to get something else done. I think a great example of that is also students who might be in Scouts. So somebody who's going for their Eagle Scout or their Gold Scout. If you really want to, I think, kind of impress an admissions officer, I would say do something that you really care about. Kind of go beyond, I think, the idea of like, oh, I'll build a shelf or a bench, which is great. And I'll get my Eagle, or I can do something that'll have a very positive effect on my community. I once read an application of a student who actually put together a health fair in a place where most people were uninsured and didn't have access to regular health, and put together a 400 person community event, got doctors and dentists and nutritionists out there, and also made it fun, right? Made it kind of a carnival as well, but gave people access to this, right? And they also had translators there too. So he kind of put together this amazing project and had also related to what he enjoys, which is advocating for his community. Definitely a potential politician there, or public, somebody who wants to change policy. And he did something bigger, right? So he took that opportunity and he thought about, what do I care about and how can I have a positive effect on my community? Okay. All right. If you write about extracurriculars on your application form, what do you absolutely have to do? Does anybody know what you have to do? We talked about it in the essay session. If you are going to be specific, that's true. And you've got to be your authentic self, all true. Use your limited words wisely, again, very true. But you also, yes, tell them why you love it, exactly. But you also have to add new information, right? So you can't just repeat what's already in the activity section. You've got to add more information. You've got to dig in and then give us that. Why do you love it? Why are you passionate about it? Why has this given you a sense of community? Why are we talking about it again, right? And so you have to make sure there's new information added. Some things I want you to think about before you do write about extracurriculars, or while you're writing about extracurriculars, is, again, make sure you add that new information. They have a list of what you've done, so they don't need a checklist, right? They don't need you to run through, again, your practice schedule. It needs to be much deeper than that. Remember that a lot of stories might be similar too, especially if, let's say, you had an injury and you were able to kind of work your way back to playing your sport, or, you kind of all worked together for the big game and maybe lost or won. You want to make sure that it's filled with enough detail about why it's important to you, what you've learned from the experience, how you've applied those learnings to your life, that it makes sense to write about it, right? You don't want it to be something that maybe if they change the name of the sport, somebody else could have written, right? Because it's not specific enough. It's not telling them enough about you. And you just have to be very clear about why the sport is important, right? And it can't just be superficial, surface level. You've really got to dig deeper so that they are getting a sense of you and getting a sense that you are more than just your sport as well. All right, so what's something you're going to do this fall to maximize your extracurricular impact? So what's something that you're going to do to kind of go be above and beyond participation, or maybe start thinking about a project that you could take on, or a project or a goal you have for an extracurricular before you graduate? What's something you could do to leave an organization you're a part of better than you found it? Okay. Robotics, do a beach cleanup, start a nonprofit, do some more service hours. Great. All right. In summary, most applicants need to do multiple things to be impactful in at least a few, right? If you're doing 8 activities, 10 activities, you're not expected to be a leader in all of them. You can definitely participate in some things, right? I gave you that example of someone saying, I just want to be in the chorus, or I just want to be in the ensemble for the play. But I like the theater. I like the theater students and I want to be a part of it, but I'm going to really excel in debate, and I'm going to really excel in community service, because those are the things that are more, very important to me. Schools are really looking for impact above all else. And hopefully through that impact, they see that you're a passionate person who can take initiative, who's had leadership. They might also be looking, I guess you could say, for, somebody being really exceptional or specialized in something. So winning debate competitions, being at nationals or states for your athletics, winning a science fair, right? So being really good at something and having that kind of accolade is also helps you stand out. And that is also kind of a form of impact. And extracurriculars overall give you great opportunities to write about what's important to you. They are a way for you to demonstrate what's important to you, to show what's important to you, and not just tell us what's important to you, but actually allow you to take action. Okay, so depending where you are, right? Depending on where you are in grades, I know you might be like, I feel overwhelmed, or, oh gosh, I don't have enough time. Let me tell you where I think, you should really be thinking. So if you are, in 8th grade, 9th grade, it is 9th grade especially is your time to explore and figure out what you like. So don't limit yourself, especially when you're starting high school. You're trying to kind of, get used to the new academics, get used to your new teachers. But you also need to try things and not wait to 10th grade to do it. Try them. So if you've always wanted to go out for a play, go out for a play. Maybe you aren't a great actor and maybe you end up doing tech crew, right? And love it. Try to go for the robotics team. If you think you're interested in business, try out for FBLA, right? Explore the things that you've been curious about, or things that maybe you've already been doing, especially sports, playing an instrument, and don't be afraid to try and push yourself to do more things. And if you're like, I feel you don't want to do everything at my school, remember, you can do things in the community as well. And you can even do things online, especially if you have more of a niche interest in something. In 10th grade, hopefully you have figured out what you like, and you can kind of start to focus in a bit more and kind of narrow down your activities, maybe even take on an official or unofficial leadership role where you're mentoring or joining a committee, but really start to think about, how can I have long-term and lasting impact in these organizations? Like, what's something I want to be able to accomplish by the time I graduate? And that could be, I want to make it to state. I want to grow this club. I want to make sure this club, doesn't, always has a sponsor, always has an advisor. So I'm going to figure out a way to make that happen. Things like that. In 11th grade is really where you can take on, where you're kind of expected to have taken on some leadership positions, whatever that might look like, but definitely really start to think about the impact you can have. 12th grade, kind of same idea. They're still looking for you to be very involved in your activities and continuing to work towards leaving them better. Everyone should take initiative. Everyone should try to push themselves a little bit outside of their comfort zone. And again, remember, you can always go out into your community or online if you don't want to do that within your school community. And another good way to kind of figure out what you like or don't like is to journal, to document. This is the advice I give, especially when you're trying to figure out what you want to study, or when you're doing your college research and trying to figure out what you like or don't like about certain colleges, what fits you best, is to kind of note how you feel. What, what topics or what chapters, in class get you excited, like are most enjoyable to you. What you enjoy doing. You might say, oh, I really love music, but I don't like band. Maybe you find another way to, get involved with music. But you can have these realizations and these check-ins with yourself by actually writing it down. All right, so I know there was a lot there, but I definitely want to leave time for questions and get it back to you, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll leave the slide up on the way out. A reminder for everyone as you're kind of looking at some of these, like, okay, I think I have these main points, but how would I write that into an essay, or who can help me review my essay, or any of those kind of things? This is part of a summer-long, really year-long college prep program here at Varsity Tutors. If you're a learning member, you've got access to all kinds of great small group classes and an essay review service, all those kind of things to be able to help you put all these things together. So we hope you guys will check all that out. If you're a learning member, all these events are all recorded and in your account on your college prep page. So please check all these things out. Let's go. We'll go back full screen to the two of us here for some questions. So we can kind of get some candid answers here. We've got some really good ones, and got a good 10 minutes or so. One that came out, it's really topical because we're in the middle of summer right now, is a couple people asked, something along the lines of, if it's a short summer program I did, but it was impactful, or I was passionate about it, does it help me or hurt me to focus on, write about things that were a little shorter term in nature, especially if it was something like a summer program?
No, I think it's great to talk about a summer program. And I think it's also, what did that summer program do for you, right? Did it get you excited about journalism? So you went and joined the school paper and you're writing now, right? So it's, what did that summer program do for you? Did it open up a door? Are you now studying more coding languages? Are you now excited to teach? Like, what did it do, and how have you continued to grow since doing that summer program? But yeah,
awesome. Actually, one of the questions was even about like, hey, but if I do it every summer, does that help? So I think, that idea of continuity and growth definitely resonates. And thanks to all who are asking it. Also, on the note of summer, we've got quite a few rising ninth graders right now, and a common topic was, when does the clock start running on my high school activities? If I started something in middle school and kept it going through high school, when they ask about the dates I was involved, do I start with the earliest dates? Or can I talk about things that I did, the summer before ninth grade? And when does the clock start running? How much does middle school play a factor? How should we think about those things?
Yeah. So when you're filling out your application, it's 9th to 12th grade, right? They only want to see what you've done in high school, because they assume you've grown quite a bit, both physically and emotionally, since middle school. But officially, the clock starts after 8th grade. So the summer after 8th grade is actually the summer of 9th grade, right? Because by the time you graduate, like 9th grade is the summer before, 10th grade is the summer before, and so on. So officially is the summer before ninth grade counts. If you've been doing something since you were 4, there's a way to say, oh, I've been playing violin for 12 years. Right. You can put that in there. Or it's like, I, earned my black belt when I was 13, but I've continued to teach, right? It's still, they want it to be something that's still part of your life. So it's like, I earned my black belt when I was 13. I haven't gone to the studio since. They don't care, right? It's not relevant to who you are anymore, or at least you haven't found a way to make it relevant to you. So they only want to know what high school has been like, but there's definitely a way to kind of show them, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years and I keep, here's how I've grown.
Awesome. I like that. Yeah. It's about continuity. Yeah. If you think you peaked at age 12, there's still time. Somebody asked, is 11th grade too young to start? There's always time to start and continue to make an impact. But yeah, if you peaked at age 12, that's probably not what you should be writing about anyway. So awesome. Thank you for that. Consulting some notes here. One other one that came up quite a bit in a bunch of different ways was, what if I don't have time for these kind of things, or don't make time for these kinds of sort of organized activities? Someone mentioned, and I'm envious, that they're homeschooled and traveling around the world, like they're sailing around the world. A couple other people mentioned that they have responsibilities, whether it's taking care of siblings or like helping out around the house, those kinds of things, or after school jobs. And some other people mentioned, like, hey, do schools care about if you can write about self-care or just family time, prioritizing being around, generations of family and those kind of things? How important is it that it's formal and organized, and how should people in different circumstances think about where their extracurriculars fit in?
Yeah, so it's all about circumstance. It's all about context, right? These admissions officers are trying to get to know what your environment is, what your context is, where you're coming from, and understand your path. So if you have home responsibilities, you have home responsibilities. If you have a long commute, you have a long commute, right? I would say if you are cleaning or you're, on the bus, listen to books on tape, listen to podcasts that are of interest to you as well, right? That's like a little way for you to kind of stay connected and say, yeah, I don't have a lot of time, but when I do, this is what I listen to, or this is what I enjoy learning about, right? You still have kind of control in that sense, or, read a book on the bus too. So you can still do a little bit, right? There's a little bit of wiggle room when you have a spare moment, but there's so much value into helping out your family. There's so much value in working. So they're going to see that as something a responsibility you have, and they're definitely not going to hold that against you. They're going to see it as a positive. If you are homeschooled, and I guess, traveling the world, cool. I'm sure there are responsibilities that kind of come with that, but I would definitely, say that it would be a good idea for you to do a lot of reading, for you to maybe be part of some online communities in some way or another. Because you do still need to kind of show that you can collaborate with others, that you have other interests as well. And if something's significant to you and important to you, like spending time with family, you can write about that in your essay and kind of explain that as well. So nobody's here is doing anything wrong, right? Or, not setting themselves up for success. It's just more of, make sure you can point to things that you enjoy, or say, I have explored a little bit. I haven't had as much time, but I have explored a little bit. Or, here's kind of what I do in between travels, or what I enjoy doing. Like, know what you like and try to get to know who you are, because that's really what they're trying to get out of this.
Awesome. Thank you. And so based on that, I think we'll know the answer to this one. I really like this question. If somebody mentioned, is it worth doing an extracurricular if it doesn't seem like I'll be impactful, or it will be the kind of thing that will stand out? Is it worth doing activities just for their own sake? I think I know what you're going to say, but let's make sure we get that one on record.
Of course, it is worth doing extracurriculars that you're not going to be the best at. It's great when it works out that you really love something and you're awesome at it, but that's really not the majority of our lives. But if you enjoy doing something, again, there's a lot of joy there. There's a lot you're going to learn from it. You can still be the most improved player in something. You can still grow a lot, and you can still have impact. right? You don't have to be at the national or international level. Like I said, you can help grow a program and recruit new members. You can help fundraise, you can help tutor. There are things that you can do where you can have impact. You just don't think about it as I have to be published in the New York Times. No, you just, you need to think about it more at a kind of a local level, like within your school community. How can I leave this a little bit better?
Awesome. Thank you. I like that. Maybe leads to similar advice. Couple people brought up, what advice do you have either for introverts, for people who just don't naturally seek out leadership, who feel a little bit, more comfortable being part of a team, but not necessarily starting a new initiative or anything like that? What's your advice for people like that who just sort of think, I don't know that I can be the leader, be the face of an organization, be the one to instigate, or, I'm just an introvert.
Yeah, it's great to be an introvert. I too am an introvert. I get my energy from alone time, right? So your excellence can come from your independent activities, right? You could be a great cross-country runner, but you're still on a team. You could be a great researcher, and you maybe work with one person or kind of have to check in with them, but you're doing your own project, right? You could be a great team member who, you're not running for leadership, but you're always willing to help out. You're the person that arranges all the study guides and will sit with anyone when they don't understand an answer, and you will patiently walk them through it. You're the person that plays a beautiful cello, right? And you practice a lot, right? So as an introvert, you have a lot of opportunities to also excel and to collaborate with others and to contribute. You don't have to be the center of attention. You don't have to give huge speeches to be what a college is looking for. And in fact, they don't want everybody to be they don't want everybody to be like just talking all the time and needing to be the center of attention. We need different personalities on campus. We definitely learn a lot from each other. So, you can also pursue online communities as well, and maybe more activities that are more one-on-one, right? Or a little more personal, right? Whether that's like teaching or chess or anything where you're just not the center of attention. So there's a lot out there, and admissions officers definitely love introverts as well.
Thank you. It's a good point. I think all the way to the beginning, you mentioned, part of why they want to know about your extracurriculars and, read your essays in detail and all those things is they're building a campus community, and a community of all people who need to be the center of attention would be a tricky community for all those people. So I think it's good to know, like you mentioned, you're sort of, judged against your opportunities. There's room for everyone. They're trying to put together a group that will fit well together versus, all one archetype of student who all stood out at the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're building a community, right? And we all bring different strengths to the table. We all, we want to study different things. We come from different types of backgrounds, different parts of the country or the world. And so our activities are also different. Our personalities are different, which is great. They're building this community to complement one another, and they don't expect you to do everything. They just expect you to be you and be unapologetically you, and share your perspectives and bring your gifts to their campus.
On that note, actually brings up another question. Quite a few people are asking about if a lot of your extracurriculars are independent. A couple people asked about coding projects they've done or art projects they've done or other things that are, it's easy if you were, captain of the quiz bowl team or first chair or something like that. Like that's a title. You put it in that extracurricular section, they know what it means. If you have a lot more sort of freelance projects, independent type projects, what type of proof documentation are you allowed to give? Should you give? Do you have to give to be able to back up that, you were committed to this activity, you did have an impact or create things for independent minded activities? How do we make sure that appears on the application?
So different colleges will handle it a little bit differently, but there's often an opportunity for you to submit supplemental material. So if you, for example, are a creative writer, maybe you're not published though, right? It's pretty hard to get published. So you're not published. You have maybe written for the school lit mag, right? But your teachers that thinks you're really good and you love it. You've gone to like a poetry program and you've gotten good feedback too. You can submit a few poems, right? You can submit a few poems if you think that's going to enhance your application and help them see the strength. Even if you're not going to be a lit major, like you can still submit it because it could be a strength. Especially in the arts, there will be some pretty specific instructions from each school, but if you are a talented trombone player, if any musical instrument, if you are a singer, if you are a composer of music, you can submit your composition. If you are a dancer, you can submit video of you dancing, right? They are looking to see your strengths. And so they're not going to see those strengths across the paper, right? If we need a little extra to really bring it to life, then you can submit that. So there is a way. There's definitely a way to do that. They don't need, I think somebody was kind of asking more about proof in there. Like, do I need to, have somebody sign off on all my community service hours? Or do I, are you going to check to see if I really was president? And the answer is no, they're going to take your word for it, right? When you're signing your application, you're saying this is all truthful. Okay. So they're going to take you at your word. If for some reason it should come to their attention, maybe via Google search, maybe via a tip from somebody else, that it's not accurate, then, there are repercussions to that, like losing your place if you've been admitted. But otherwise, they're going to take you at your word and believe you in what you're saying. So that's also something to note. Yeah, but there are different ways to submit extra material, or to even, if you wanted to expand on something, there is an additional information section in the Common App and something similar in other apps where you can kind of talk about a project, or, talk about how you spend your time, or write about it in your essay in a way to really show them why it's significant to you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, I've heard some stories of people who put their word out there, but weren't truthful in saying they did something. And, even when they were already in school, they lost their spot. So, so know that, they may not fact check you, but you don't want to be the one who, lied and got caught, I guess. We don't have to sugarcoat that. Last thing, that's not our crowd here. This is a pretty earnest and really thoughtful crowd. Thank you guys for so many great questions. Reminder, we're doing lots of these events all summer long. If your questions didn't get answered, Devery's back next week, actually. And so I wanted to bring that up. Next week, we're talking about academics, academic rigor, and intellectual curiosity. So I know that's next week, so I don't want to give too much of that away. We want to make sure everybody knows to come back for that one. If you give us a little bit of a teaser, I know a lot of people ask, just how important are extracurriculars, in comparison to academics and those kind of things. Where does this fit in, as we're going to talk about other topics here pretty soon? How critically, if people were thinking, okay, I'm going to come to the academics one next week, and you're going to tell me, to take a rigorous class schedule and all those kind of things, how do we balance our time, or how should we think about how important extracurriculars are as part of the whole?
Are we saying how important are they as the whole application?
Yeah, like is this, is extracurriculars the top thing they're going to look at? Is it a nice thing to have also, or how does it fit in? Like tonight we isolated that component.
I was reading the questions.
Oh,
so
sure. Yeah.
Did we answer them? So it's one piece, right? So let's say, you're applying to a top university. First and foremost, what they do is they look at your academics, right? Have you challenged yourself? Are your grades within range? Your test scores within range? Like, can you do the work? Can you do it well? Have you demonstrated intellectual curiosity in some way? You probably have, right? Like the majority of students applying to Harvard, 85% of them meet all those requirements, right? They can do the work, they can do it well. 85%. But they only admit 3%. So they, kind of academics are kind of the given. And then it's everything else that makes the application compelling, right? So I think a lot goes into the personal qualities, who you are, what's important to you. And then it's an extracurriculars. How are you spending your time? Again, who are you? Why are you doing this? Why have you chosen to do it? What does it mean to you? What does it say about you? So it's pretty important. Like, every school is going to have a different needs, different interests, but I would say, I don't know, academics, 40%, extracurriculars 30%, personal qualities 30%. It's not like it's not a checkbox, it's not a rubric, but it's, looking at you overall, like your extracurriculars need to be pretty strong and a pretty big part of your life in order to get into those top universities.
Thank you for that. Thanks to all of you for such great questions. We hope we'll see everybody back next week as well. So again, if your questions didn't get answered, please join us next week. And you've got a whole nother opportunity for it, along with some more insight from Devery on academics, intellectual curiosity, ways to demonstrate that. So thank you for that. One other question a lot of people have been asking is the recording of this. You'll get a recording of the session, I think tomorrow. So the email address you registered with. So for anyone who joined late or wants to go back and review any of this, that'll be out to you. And with all that, we'll leave you guys with some information about, like I said, there's plenty more where this came from, especially if you're a Varsity Tutors Learning member and want to take us up on test prep classes. We'll talk a little bit about, the value of test scores in next week's session on academics, essay writing workshops, all kinds of things, and just opportunities to figure out what interests you have that you may want to go deep with extracurriculars. So we hope to see everybody next week and in future events as well. Thanks again so much, Devery, for such great insight. Thanks to all of you for your questions, and see everybody back here soon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. I'll see you all next week, hopefully.